Number six, I think. Yeah, number six. Spirituality and psychosis. So this was my first conversation with Maya. Absolutely incredible. Absolutely incredible. It's one of my favorite ones throughout the year. Because of the way we went in the conversation and the topics, I believe there's a ceiling, there's a glass ceiling of acceptable conversations you're allowed to have. And psychosis and spirituality are not in that. Most people don't want to have that conversation. Most people feel very awkward about having a conversation. But when I first spoke to Maya, she was like, we gotta have that conversation because that was something that she'd personally been through and that she had perspective on. And I was just curious about it. And so sitting down with her and having this conversation was super enlightening. Yeah, again, to really like understand her perspective, go into her world, walk through her mind, walk through her experiences, and then relate, because I think that's so important. I just want people to feel seen. That's literally all I care about. I want people to feel seen. I want people to feel like they want someone on this podcast and be like, I'm like this person. I relate to this person because I relate to almost every person that I have on here. So I know if I do it, then you're more likely to. And I think, yeah, there's a lot of conversations that aren't being had in the mainstream because we put all these things to celebrities and we look at celebrities and look how to relate to them. But I never thought that made any sense. You can't relate to celebrities, but you can relate to the person who's just like you. And so I try to find loads of the people, a lot of people that I have on it aren't celebrities. They might be doing something, creative or sports or maybe, a thinker in some way. But most of the people out here are just people. I mean, they're just like me and you, they do something on the side. They're trying to achieve goals. They've got dreams and aspirations. They like are around my age. I think that's important. Because it kind of helps that relatability. And I think, if I show that this person can go through it, then you can go through it too. And I think this conversation, Maya, is a perfect example of that. And it really encapsulated that. It was a great conversation, great answers. She allowed me to be inquisitive and really like go there with the questions. And so I'm very, very grateful for that. Number 7. This was the conversation I had with Dan. It's called The Role of Leaders in Conflict. So this whole conversation was about like more than just this clip, it was about war. It was like, looking at past war. I believe we're looking at the Greeks. We're looking at the Greek, Peloponnesian War and looking at like how it came about, what the players involved, making connections to then and now. I love these conversations. I absolutely love these conversations. I think looking at our past and guiding our future based on that, or understanding our future based on our past, is super important. It's a skill that we don't do enough as a generation. We've kind of like let go of the past and we're moving forward. And I think there are some aspects of that which is obviously good. There's so much bigotry and stuff that we've left behind. But when it comes to knowledge, we definitely need to go back and understand because we're repeating the same thing. We're in danger of keep repeating the same thing. And I think, this conversation of Dan was super important because both of us were just really in that space, in that mental space of being able to look at these things and, be curious about history, be curious about the events that happened, and then look at it and be like, okay, yes, these are some of the things that are similar. These are some of the things that, might be happening again. And I think, I feel like we don't realize that until it's too late most of the times. History is doomed to repeat itself, as the saying goes. But if we can understand it, then we can maybe understand the value of us speaking up in certain situations. I think we might understand, our generation might have a voice, might understand our voice, but we don't understand the gravity of some of these actions, or maybe the inevitability of some of these actions, how they're going to always happen because this is how human beings tend to end up adding up to. I don't know. Like I say, I am not the person to make a moral judgment on people. I just think each individual has to look at themselves in the mirror. And I think, this conversation is about the role of leaders and the conflict in the past, but also now, really gave me perspective and really made me understand how to move forward and how to look at some of the events that are happening now. Next up is don't study chess, study yourself. This is a conversation I had with Lance. Absolutely incredible. this whole conversation was incredible, as if every conversation as you're beginning to learn. But this was really good because we looked at chess from the perspective of how to take chess and apply it to life. This is one of those applicable conversations that I'm trying to have more of, where you take an idea in society or you take a subject, or like, for example, and I love doing that with sports, take sports and then look at how sports can apply to life, because I think these are all the same things. I focus on poetry and jiu-jitsu, but I'm trying to branch out, and this is one of those things. Looking at chess is a way to plan your life, to see how some things, some decisions you can actually make back. It's about being patient. Was very important, very applicable kind of idea. I think Lance is a great communicator, absolutely fantastic communicator, has such a deep understanding about chess that can apply to life. It's also spiritual, so understands how to relate to human beings. So yeah, like a fantastic person, but also fantastic episode, because it really... Yeah, it was good. It was great getting to know Lance, and it was great, sitting and losing that chess. I lost very badly. But yeah, it was great meeting and having this conversation and then playing and understanding a little bit more about chess, because I've always had an interest, but I've never spoken to someone and asked them how can they relate this to the life that we live, and how can they relate this to, what we're all going through. And yeah, I think if you're ever stuck in life, whoever needs some guidance or some like understanding about some of the decisions you're making and how to, use chess as a metaphor, this is the episode for you. So 100% check it out. I learned so much from it myself. Number 8 or 9, I don't know. Whichever it is, Jeff, figure out. Number 8 or 9. Why Do We Laugh? With Professor Sophie Scott. So this was my second conversation that I had with a professor. My first one was with Tim. And then, this was my second one. Tim was actually one of my professors. So this was my first non-professor, someone I didn't know. I reached out. She spoke to me. Absolutely fantastic conversation. Again, this comes back to what I was talking about, how in the future I'm trying to make the podcast more applicable, but like find a balance. I want to find a balance between what can we apply to our lives, but like make the topic interesting. And so understanding the neuroscience of laughter and emotions, that's such an important thing, because we all have it. We all share that in common. I think going down to the scientific level and going down beneath the head, below the head, as they say, and embodying in these emotions and trying to understand where they come from, and also how they affect different things, like understanding how it affects grief is super, super important. Understanding how we develop it, as a species, This was a really good conversation. I think Professor Scott is a fantastic communicator. Again, she understands human beings in a very, very deep level, understands her science, and is obviously an expert at what she does. And finding the balance between expert knowledge, human beings, and understanding identity, understanding emotions was a brilliant arc, and I'm glad I had this conversation with her, because I think I'm trying to do more of that. Take emotions and try to like dissect emotions, because coming back to what I said before, there's a lot of things we don't understand, we take for granted. Why we laugh, why we cry, why we have all these different emotions, as human beings. And this is my journey to understand myself, but I think in that process, I can bring some value to the audience as they're coming on that journey. And so, this is one of those conversations I'm glad I had. I'm glad it gave me perspective when, I was able to relate on that human level, but I also learned a lot throughout this conversation. Number 9, I think. I have no idea what number I'm on, by the way, but number 9. Artist and athlete. Get comfortable living between identities. So this was my second conversation I had with Chloe. Amazing, incredible. I mean, as the title suggests, it was really just the intersection of those two things. That encapsulates a lot of what I'm trying to approach of this conversation. I think there is no need to pick one. And I think I said this in the conversation. There is no need to pick one identity. There is no need to feel like you have to now be put in a box. That was never comfortable with me. That was never something I wanted to do in my life. I always wanted to see what was out there. I always wanted to improve myself by following my curiosity and following my interest. And I've always been an athlete ever since I was a kid. I've always just wanted to do sports. I've always been out playing sports and doing all these things. But as I also grown older, I've also become more intellectual, more artistic, more creative. And I think, moving into my poetic, phase has been super important for my development. And so, like, imagine understanding all of these things. Imagine trying to like balance all of these things. I think it's you have to get comfortable living between the identities. You have to get comfortable understanding that you don't really know yourself and you're discovering yourself. And life is a lot about discovering that the discovery of self, rather than just about, staying in one place, and trying to hold on to the identity. And so having a conversation with Chloe, who's exactly the same, her journey's been mirrored. I think she's also more of an artist. She's had more of that art, that creative experience. Seeing that and seeing her rediscovery of jiu-jitsu, a sport we both love, I think was super important. I think this conversation in total, and again, all of these kind of lessons, I think, check out this conversation. Of course, I'm going to be like, check out every episode, which you should, by the way. These episodes are very, very good. But yeah, especially if you relate to these clips, I would say, because the clips is embedded into a whole wider conversation, and it flows in the narrative arc of that conversation of getting to know the person. There's so much stuff they say that is relatable. So yeah, I think, again, this conversation is so important. I think the theme of it, which is like get comfortable between different identities, or something I had to embody, like more than just understand conceptually. That's something I had to really embody and really live out throughout the year, because life just kept throwing to me new things, and it was like, okay, can you handle this? Can you handle this? And I had to let myself grow the confidence to do it. And so having this conversation was a big way for me to kind of bookend that chapter of my life.